Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel, and today I want to talk about Bernard Wolfe's Limbo from 1952. This was a 400-page book. It took me probably about 5 or 6 days to read. Right now, I'm reading A Bridge of Years by Robert Charles Wilson, almost 400 pages. Right now, I'm reading A Bridge of Years by Robert Charles Wilson, almost 400 pages, and in one day, I almost finished the book. So as some might say, Limbo was a bit of a chewy read. It was also satirical, and SF satire and I don't sit well together. So as you might guess, this one was a bit of a train wreck for me. I did finish it. If I wanted to make a one-sentence review, I might say it's a bit of an esoteric, navel-gazing, satirical romp with a dollop of Vonnegut. But let's start off with talking about the author, Bernard Wolfe. Bernard Wolfe was an American author, born 1915, died 1985 at the age of 70. Limbo was published in 1952. Wolfe would have been in his mid-30s writing this novel. He's a graduate of Yale with a degree in psychology. He moved to New York in the mid-30s and contributed to Trotskyist journals such as The Militant and The New International. With this background, Wolfe traveled to Mexico in 1937, and he worked 8 months as Trotsky's bodyguard and secretary. Then, in the late 1930s, he occasionally worked with the Merchant Marines, moved back to New York, and wrote some pornographic novels for a year. During the war, he wrote war-related science articles for Popular Science Monthly and Mechanics Illustrated. He eventually became editor of Mechanics Illustrated. In 1946, he collaborated with jazz musician Mez Mesro in writing Mesro's autobiography, Really the Blues. The book was a popular success and introduced a mass audience to aspects of black culture. He then turned his attention to cybernetics and psychology. In 1951, he published a short story, Self-Portrait in Galaxy. It had themes of cybernetics, artificial limbs and prostheses, computerized warfare, masochism, and voluntary amputeeism would all be expanded upon in his first published novel, Limbo, of 1952. David Pringle selected Limbo for inclusion in his book, Science Fiction, The 100 Best Novels. J.G. Ballard and Harlan Ellison both praised this novel, but Anthony Boucher said it was pretentious hodgepodge. I lean towards the pretentious hodgepodge, although there are very interesting thoughts about cybernetics, with amazing visuals described within the novel, and a lot of politics. Some of this is very interesting looking back to the year 1952. So what is the story about? In the late 1970s, giant computers were handed control of geopolitics. A nuclear Third World War was brought about. It turns out that computers may not necessarily be the best in guiding us in political situations. It is now the post-apocalyptic 1990s. Our main protagonist is a neurosurgeon, Dr. Martine, who has escaped the post-war years by finding a small island in the Indian Ocean. Here he has integrated his life with the natives of this island. They have a peculiar way of handling violence within their society. They would scoop a portion of a person's brain out in hopes of tempering their violent tendencies and make them pacifistic. Of course, there wasn't a great success rate in this. A lot of people died. But now, with neurosurgeon Dr. Martine, this procedure could be done safely and more precisely. This becomes somewhat of an experimental journal on his part. He notes that removing aggression often removes sexual desire as well. He mulls over whether peace at any cost is worth the price. Yet, he continues. Then a boat comes to the island with people with prosthetic limbs. We're talking all 4 limbs, 2 arms, 2 legs. They are robotic. Their limbs are clear, and we see sparks within them. There is some spectacular imagery here as they leap and bound around the island, showing off fits of strength with their limbs. Imagine the $6 Million Man with transparent limbs. Limbs that sparked and shone in the dark. Why are they amputees? They're voluntary. They've removed their limbs in hopes of being more pacifistic. I know, it sounds weird, doesn't it? But here we go. Limbo. the removal of arms. Eventually, the Doctor leaves the island and comes back to the United States. Both coastlines are nuclear slag, but there is a middle 400-mile-long ribbon from Texas and New Mexico up towards Canada and South Dakota and North Dakota. This area is habitable and has a population explosion. Here we have the prosthetic-limbed Americans, and there are also prosthetic-limbed Russians who still exist in a small portion of their land. They compete in games, but as they want to win, there starts to be a rush on the rare minerals which are needed to create their prosthetic limbs, and there's a scientific race to make their limbs more and more powerful. Now we have long portions of the novel that take a look at the political structure of the United States. We also look at themes of war and pacifism, men and women. There's quite a lot of misogynist passages in here. Will this supposed pacifistic world now turn to warfare once again in search of all these minerals? Is the island that Dr. Martin came from rich in these minerals? What will happen to the people living there? Will Dr. Martin be able to return to that island, an island which has his wife and child? On the front of the hardcover first printing of Limbo, it says, "A diabolical tale, mad, merry, and monstrous, of men and women caught in the vortex of history yet to happen." Not a bad description. There's a lot of satire in this novel, some that just really hits you over the head with its ideas. And then there's also very long passages talking about political ideas, talking about cybernetics, which I found interesting, especially at that time, and also the relationship of men and women. If you're interested in sort of a pretentious look at the 1952 attitudes in this area, well, this might be for you. For the average fan of science fiction, I'm not sure this one is worth your time. I think you may get bored with it and perhaps even DNF it. So what do I give it? I recognize that it has some historical importance, but it wasn't a fun time. You would think that these cybernetic men would be really interesting. One thing I do want to mention that I haven't so far is that if you have all 4 limbs removed, you're considered to be almost a god within the society, and you're considered slightly less for each limb that you still have of your own. So a person who has no prosthetics is kind of a working class person. If you have 1 prosthetic, you've reached a certain level. 2, 3, and all 4 reaches the highest level within the society. But back to what I think of it, it was a necessary read for the journey that I'm on, but I really wouldn't recommend it. I give it 5 out of 10. I'm curious, have you read Limbo? What are your thoughts? Please feel free to disagree with me. Until next time, keep reading.